Greetings, Legends! One of the defining features of World of Warships Legends is the mighty battleships. Let's dive into some of their unique features. Battleships are, first and foremost, gigantic artillery platforms that are capable of firing several one-ton shells at enemies from miles away. These guns can hit hard but aren't without their downsides. And when they hit, they leave a mark. Battleships have two types of shells, armor-piercing and high-explosive. Typically, you will want to have armor-piercing shells loaded for the majority of your targets. Armor-piercing shells are best for landing devastating citadel hits that deal full damage. Regular shell penetrations deal 33% of the maximum shell damage. There's one downside to having so much power: over-penetration. Battleship caliber weaponry can pass straight through the target, dealing only 10% of the maximum shell damage. Over-penetration is determined by three main factors: enemy armor thickness, your shell's velocity, and your shell's fuse timer. Your shell needs to detonate inside the enemy ship to deal penetration or citadel damage. Most battleships have a regular length fuse timer. However, some British battleships have a shorter fuse timer. This makes it more difficult to strike citadels with British battleships, but you get more reliable damage from penetrations. Battleship high-explosive shells can be devastating, but these are not usually their main weapon. If you find yourself battling against an enemy you can't damage with armor-piercing shells, swap over to high-explosive ones and set some fires. The second feature of battleships is their armor protection and sheer size. This translates into a massive health pool and the ability to shrug off shells that would normally doom a cruiser. When properly positioned, a battleship can be nearly impervious to critical damage. To effectively do this, you need to be aware of your ship's strengths and weaknesses and what enemies can overmatch your plating. Historically, battleships could not be entirely coated in armor, and protection was usually focused on the critical citadel spaces. This left relatively thin plating over the extremities that could be compromised by shells. In-game, we call this overmatch, where a large enough shell can ignore the thickness and angle of armor up to a certain point. To find out what plating any gun can overmatch, take the size of the gun and divide it by 14.3. For example, Iowa's 406mm guns can overmatch any plating up to 28mm and cut through it like a hot knife through butter. This means that Iowa is able to ignore the bow plating on most cruisers and damage them from almost any angle. It's important to know what your capabilities are, as well as the enemy's. Knowledge is half the battle. In general, you should maneuver your ship in order to minimize damage taken and make use of all of your firepower, but don't show the enemy your broadside. Battleships are big and ponderous, and they require pre-planning for sailing around the battlefield or 100% intentional tactical beaching. A good battleship commander will also recognize the dangers of torpedoes and anticipate them by using the minimap to their advantage. I hope this helps you command battleships in battle, Legends. Get out there and fire some monstrous guns in battle and turn the tide.